Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. I hope you're enjoying the festive season and all the Formula 1 content coming at you. Reviews of 2021, and that's what we're here today to do. We're going to rank the 20 drivers from best to worst in terms of how they perform this season. And I know you could say, the Drivers' Championship does that for us, but I don't think it does, because there's a few drivers up the top here where I'm like, you do not deserve to be up the top. You're just lucky that you were in a car that performed in a few races over the course of the season. And then there's some drivers towards the bottom that I think had really good seasons, but unfortunately couldn't pick up the points that they maybe necessarily were needed to get higher up in the Drivers' Championship. So we'll talk constructors, we'll talk drivers, and we'll of course put them in a little tier list. I'll link this tier list in the description down below. Send me yours so I can have a little look at them. We're going to rank the drivers from just incredible, like a wonderful season, and probably will do very, very well to do better than that next season. An amazing season, but maybe there's just a little bit more to come from them. Good, but can improve. Those drivers that were in the middle, had okay seasons, and maybe were a bit 50-50 here or there. Not quite there. The drivers that just kind of underdid my expectations a little bit, and then not even close. The drivers that just didn't get anywhere close to where I thought they were going to be and had atrocious seasons overall. So let's delve straight into it. Let's start fairly easy then. Let's start Nikita Mazepin, Mick Schumacher, and I'm going to put Mick Schumacher just above Nikita Mazepin. Now, this was actually pretty close. I think both the Haas guys obviously had terrible seasons, but the car was awful. The only team not to score a point this season. So you can't really blame them for having a pretty horrible season between them. Yeah, Mazepin's going to go below just purely on pace, although Mick Schumacher did cost Haas more money. Obviously had lots more crashes than Nikita Mazepin. No, I think I'm happy with that order. I think Mazepin had a worse season than Mick Schumacher. Let's go for... Who are we going to go for? Let's go for the Aston Martin boys. The Aston Martin boys, Vettel and Stroll. I'm going to put Vettel in not quite there. I think I was expecting a little bit more from him this season. He did have 2 podiums, though. One of them obviously taken away for that fuel incident. Where did he... I'm not sure. Yeah, Vettel had 43, Lance Stroll 34. I think I'm going to put both of those guys in not quite there, mainly because the Aston Martin wasn't quite where I expected to be. But I think both of them could have had slightly better seasons. We did see quite a few mistakes from both of the drivers now I think about it. Vettel, the spin in Silverstone stands out to me. Lance Stroll getting in the way of Vettel and actually hitting into Vettel in Russia as well. That kind of stands out. Yeah, they caused a lot of problems for each other, and I'm going to put them in not quite there. Someone else who I'm going to put in not quite there is Yuki Tsunoda. Just to round out the rookies, I guess. I was expecting a lot from Yuki Tsunoda, especially after Bahrain. After Bahrain, he had such a good race, finished in the top 10. Yes, I know he ended the season with a 4th place finish. Ended up 14th, though, 2 points behind a terrible Stroll, let's be honest. And... yeah, I expected a lot more from Yuki Tsunoda. Did he have a better season than Lance Stroll? No, I'm happy with that order. I think Yuki Tsunoda had a worse season than Lance Stroll, but a better season than Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, in my opinion. Let's go for someone in the middle then. Who do I think was good but can improve? I think Sergio Perez was good but can improve. I'm just trying to sort of get a scale for myself. I think Sergio Perez was very good. He had like flashes of brilliance, but if you think, he ended up being 36 points off Valtteri Bottas. That's probably what ended up costing Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship as well. It wasn't great from Sergio Perez at times, and you could see that Red Bull were frustrated with him at various points throughout the season. But then, he redeemed himself at the end with that drive in Abu Dhabi and obviously slowing down Lewis Hamilton, what was it, like 7 or 8 seconds by the end of that lap, which was ridiculous. So, yeah, I think it was good from Sergio Perez, but there's room for improvement there, and it was his first year at Red Bull, so that's probably about where he should be. Let's go for someone who had an amazing season. I think we can put both of the Ferrari boys in amazing season. I absolutely have sung the praises of these two here. I think Charles Leclerc has been so incredibly consistent if he hasn't had those like peaks that Carlos Sainz has had. I'm going to put Carlos Sainz just ahead of Charles Leclerc, just because when it came to obviously the Drivers' Championship, he did manage to outdo him just over that last race. Yes, Abu Dhabi really didn't go Charles Leclerc's way. He got really done over by both of the safety car incidents, but he probably should have ended... No, I'm going to go for Carlos Sainz, just for those podiums. You know, he had those real highlights to his season. Whereas Charles Leclerc, obviously the one podium in Silverstone should have maybe been a win. That might have pumped him up a little bit. A couple of pole positions in there as well. Like, let's not get it wrong. Both of these drivers had wonderful, wonderful seasons. I think Carlos Sainz just edges it for me in terms of how good he was this season compared to Charles Leclerc. Then we're getting into the interesting ones, right? Because there's a few drivers in... Well, actually, you know what? Let's pop Kimi Räikkönen was in not quite there. Was he better than Yuki Tsunoda? Yes, I would say so. Was he better than Lance Stroll? Ooh, this is close. I'm going to go for yes. I think maybe this is my Kimi bias and the fact that I do absolutely love Kimi Räikkönen. But I'm going to go for Kimi Räikkönen had a better season than Lance Stroll, but not quite as good as Sebastian Vettel. You know, he outdid his teammate quite considerably by the end of the season. 10 points in that Alfa Romeo was pretty good going. And it's not, you know, like the Williams car where they had a massive jump because of an incident or because of a crash. So, you know, Latifi picked up lots of his points in Hungary. Obviously, Russell picked up lots of his points in Spa, both of those being races where there was lots of controversy and lots of incidents. Whereas Kimi Räikkönen kind of picked his up progressively throughout the season. I think Kimi Räikkönen goes in. Not quite there. I expected maybe a little... Does he? I think it was good, but... No, I think he's got to go behind Sebastian Vettel. And Sebastian Vettel wasn't quite where I expected him to be. So I think Kimi Räikkönen does just slot into that gap there. Let's talk his teammate then, Giovinazzi. I'm going to put Giovinazzi in not even close. And I think this is a bit harsh, because he was very, very close to picking up points quite often. I think he's got the most 12th place finishes or the most 11th place finishes of any driver. But I did expect him to beat Kimi Räikkönen this season. That was kind of my underlying expectation for Giovinazzi. Even though I said in my predictions that I think Kimi Räikkönen will beat him, I think to get to the level expected from Formula One, to guarantee himself that Alfa Romeo seat for next year, which we now know he's off to Formula E, I think if he would have tried, or if he would have beat Kimi Räikkönen, obviously he tried, if he would have beat Kimi Räikkönen, I think there would have been maybe a little bit more argument for him staying, but I don't think he was even close. And you know what, 3 points to 10 points, it was actually quite a big jump, and yeah, Giovinazzi goes in not even close for me. Let's have a little look then. Where did I put... Let's have a look at the Alpine guys, because the Alpine guys kind of sit in that middle ground, right? 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. They kind of outdid AlphaTauri quite well. AlphaTauri picked up lots of points in the final race of the season, with Yuki Tsunoda coming 4th, Pierre Gasly coming 5th. But Alpine kind of like progressed throughout the season and did pretty well. Obviously, Ocon just coming below Alonso by 7 points. I'm going to go for both of these guys in good but can improve. And you know what? That might be a bit harsh, but I think both of them had races and periods in the season where they just weren't quite there. Alonso's was obviously at the beginning. Those first 4 or 5 races, it really took him that time to get back into the swing of Formula One, and that was expected. He'd had a couple years out. And then Ocon had a bit sort of early first half of the season as well. What was it? Sort of Monaco through to Silverstone. He had like 6 or 7 races in there where he was just a bit off the pace and looked a bit rubbish. And I think, you know, when we're looking at a season of 22 races, if you've got 6 races where you could have improved quite heavily, it's good, but you can definitely improve. And that's maybe a little bit harsh. Obviously, Ocon getting a win in this season, Alonso getting a podium. The Alpine did look really, really good on some tracks and absolutely dreadful on others. But yeah, I think both of those drivers had a really good season. I'm going to put them just below Sergio Perez, but they're definitely ahead of the likes of Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. Like, they were wonderful to watch at points this season. Let's go then for Lando Norris. Lando Norris had an absolutely amazing season. Kind of dwindled off towards the end of the season. And you know what? Just because he was able to keep in front of Charles Leclerc in the Drivers' Championship, I'm going to put Lando Norris. Again, I think it's that podium. The fact he's got those podium finishes, the 2nd place finish, where Charles Leclerc kind of picked his points up. in the peripheries. He never was right up there. Charles Leclerc always was like 4th or 5th or 6th, wasn't he, picking up those points? Whereas Lando Norris had those proper standout performances, even the ones where they didn't quite go his way. We think back to Russia. That was an absolutely wonderful performance from him. Just couldn't quite get the victory over the line because of the rain. I think Lando Norris had an amazing season. Did he have a better season than Carlos Sainz? Is an interesting question. You know what? I'm going to leave them this way around. I'm going to leave Carlos Sainz as having a slightly better season than Lando Norris. And I think that's very, very close. I think I'm giving Carlos Sainz the edge just because he was in a brand new team. He was with Charles Leclerc, who's a very, very tough teammate to beat. And he was able to beat him. Whereas Lando Norris's teammate was quite easy to sort of beat. And I think, because Lando Norris was the one in the points and Daniel Ricciardo, who we'll get onto in a moment, was not, Lando Norris probably got a lot of the upgrades and a lot of like the team's help along the way, more so than maybe a Carlos Sainz or a Charles Leclerc, who probably shared it more 50-50 along the season. But this is close between these three. These three are all up there for driver of the season for me. I'm going to go Carlos Sainz just edges it over Lando Norris, over Charles Leclerc. But that is super close between them. And you know what? I'll put in my other candidate for driver of the season, Pierre Gasly. I think he had an amazing season. The fact that he's got 110 points, broke that century barrier. The fact that he basically carried AlphaTauri to 6th place and put them within touching distance of an Alpine team which had 2 drivers who were consistently battling for the points. His qualifying pace was unbelievable. Yes, I'm a little bit biased. I'm a massive Pierre Gasly fan, but at the same time, a wonderful, wonderful season from him. And I'm really, really hopeful of 2022. I just hope that AlphaTauri can give him another car which he can stand out in and maybe just change their strategy a little bit to give Pierre Gasly the best possible chance. Stop trying to go for shock podiums. Stop trying to go for shock wins and actually just drive the race that is in front of him. I think AlphaTauri can do really, really well next year. I think it's their best year ever in terms of finishing this year, even with a pretty poor Yuki Tsunoda. So next year has big things on the cards for AlphaTauri if they can get it right. I think there's 2 more sort of obvious ones that we can get out of the way. I actually put this category in there just for these 2 because I thought, putting Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen anywhere close to anybody else just didn't feel right because they have just been outstanding compared to everybody. They have been minutes up the road compared to everybody, and my goodness me, what a championship they gave us, what a drive they gave us, and both of them deserve to win driver of the year in my opinion. I think Max Verstappen does just edge it in terms of how good that season was from him. I think you could argue that he'd had the better car for the majority of the season. Yes, the Mercedes at the beginning, at the end, was probably the better, but for a good stint in the middle, the Red Bull looked like the better car option. But Max Verstappen just so dominant, so good. Most laps led, most pole position, most race wins. Like, a wonderful champion, a really good drive from him, and definitely deserves to be my driver of the season, top of this tree, with Lewis Hamilton literally just behind, and, just behind in terms of the Drivers' Championship as well. Did carry Mercedes to a Constructors' Championship, so I've kind of taken into account that, yes, Lewis Hamilton won the Constructors, Max Verstappen won the Drivers, but then I think Red Bull could have been a lot closer to Mercedes had Sergio Perez sort of taken to the Red Bull car a little bit quicker. It sort of took... It didn't. He had very flip-floppy performances in the first half of the season, did Sergio Perez. And I'm thinking back to, Silverstone again, where he made a mistake. And, yeah, it was tough for Sergio Perez. I think they would have been really, really close to Mercedes towards the end of the season had it not been for Sergio Perez's sort of lack of knowledge of the Red Bull car. Now, these are interesting. We've got Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, George Russell, and Nicholas Latifi. I think the Williams boys are pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to put Nicholas Latifi above Giovinazzi. Has he had a better season than Yuki Tsunoda? It's close, No, I don't think he has. I think Yuki Tsunoda, being a rookie, and in a car he really struggled with to begin with, I think Nicholas Latifi is there for me. I think Nicholas Latifi is not even close to where I would... But he was in the Williams car, but he's in the same category as Giovinazzi. Nicholas Latifi, you know what? He had a good few standout performances. Yes, he was in the top 10 occasionally. I'm thinking about putting him higher, but I'm pretty happy with Nicholas Latifi. I think he's a weird one, a very weird one to try and engage Nicholas Latifi, but I'm going to put him there just above Giovinazzi and below Yuki Tsunoda. George Russell's an interesting one. George Russell should be here, right? George Russell should be in amazing season. Carried a Williams to his first ever points finish, managed to get into Q3 a solid amount of times. Looked like he could have scored points more often than he did. But then had like 6 or 7 once that Mercedes contract got guaranteed, I think he was maybe, I don't know, not worried about injury, but maybe worried about, worried about missing out on that Mercedes seat in some way. If there was a big crash for the Williams car because he was battling for 15th place, he broke his arm or something, and then he misses out on the Mercedes seat next year, he would have been absolutely livid. And I think that's fair enough. I think his head was turned towards the second half of the season. So I'm actually going to drop him down. Was he better than Ocon or Alonso? I think he goes in there for me. I think he goes in there just because the Williams car and the fact he got a podium in that Williams car. I know that Alonso got a podium in the Alpine, but I think that's much more manageable than a podium in the Williams. Yes, it was in Spa though. It was in Spa, but I'm going to put George Russell in there. That's probably one of the contentious ones. I'd love to know in the comments, whereabouts would you rank George Russell? So currently I've got George Russell, what is that? In 9th or 10th place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got him in 8th place, actually. So he's my 8th best driver of the season, is George Russell. At the moment, I've still got 2 left to put in. I think that's about right. He's definitely in the top 10. Definitely in the top 10. But it's whereabouts in that position. I think, he could slot in here. But I do like... It's close between these two. It's close between these two. Valtteri Bottas. Ooh, so much experience in... This is the problem, right? Because, yes, he outperformed Sergio Perez. But he's been at Mercedes for 5 years. Yes, he outperformed George Russell. George Russell was in a Williams and was often actually battling with Valtteri Bottas. We think back to Imola right at the beginning of the season where Valtteri Bottas was colliding with George Russell. Shouldn't have even been close to the same road as George Russell. And then Alonso with that podium, a really consistent season from him in an Alpine car that looked very 50-50. Ocon with the win. Obviously, Valtteri Bottas got a win as well. Lots of podiums for Valtteri. You know what? I'm going to put Valtteri Bottas here. I'm going to put him behind Ocon, behind Alonso. I think he's had a worse season than those two in the Alpines. Probably better than Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, better than Sebastian Vettel. You know what? They did win the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes won the Constructors' Championship quite comfortably in the end as well. So Valtteri Bottas was a big hand in that. Did end up with a really comfortable 3rd place. But I think I was just expecting more from him. He's been at Mercedes for 5 years and he still couldn't really get to grips with the car. Really didn't show much pace in many of the races. There were so many performances where he was outside the top 10 and was struggling to get through the field. And then we saw like Lewis Hamilton, whenever he was even 7th or 8th place, within 3 or 4 laps, he'd be back up into 3rd. Like, Lewis Hamilton was just an absolute machine in that Mercedes. And Valtteri Bottas was just nowhere near... He wasn't... I don't know whether it was the hunger or the determination or like something was missing from Valtteri Bottas. Obviously, the contract situation, the fact that he knew he was leaving didn't help. But yeah, it was lackluster from Valtteri Bottas at best. And I've left Daniel Ricciardo to last, mainly because I think he's the hardest one to place. He has got a win to his name. He did come in 8th place. He beat out the likes of Pierre Gasly, beat out the likes of Alonso and Ocon. But that McLaren car, as shown by Lando Norris, especially the first half of the season, moving into sort of towards the US Grand Prix was where it started to sort of dip off for McLaren. Daniel Ricciardo, you know what? I can't. I think he's had a worse season than Nicholas Latifi. I actually, like, my heart of heart wants to put Daniel Ricciardo higher because of the McLaren connection, because I genuinely really love Daniel Ricciardo, but I don't think he can get any higher than that. I think Daniel Ricciardo is down in 16th place, 17th place in my rankings. And I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave that how it is. I think Daniel Ricciardo, I expected so much more. I thought he was going to come into the McLaren. The McLaren looked quick at the beginning of the season as well. I thought he was going to, really kick on. The fact that he'd made that move from Renault over, he seemed so determined to go into a team and be the number one. And now, he's definitely second in terms of my rankings. Compared to Lando Norris, he's definitely second in terms of the Drivers' Championship, and he couldn't, help McLaren to get to the Constructors' Championship either. Ferrari ended up running away with third place because of the lack of points from Daniel Ricciardo. Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, all within 5 points of one another. And then Daniel Ricciardo down there, miles off the pace, even with a win in Monza. Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, you're not even close. I think you're behind Nicholas Latifi for me. I think you've had a worse season than Nicholas Latifi and Yuki Tsunoda. I think as a rookie and a Williams, yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, absolutely dreadful. But let me know what you think of that ranking down below. So, Max Verstappen, driver of the season. Second place, Lewis Hamilton. Third, Carlos Sainz. Fourth, Lando Norris. Fifth, Charles Leclerc. Sixth, Pierre Gasly. Seventh, Perez. 8th, George Russell. 9th, Alonso. And 10th, Ocon are my top 10 drivers of the season. Then my bottom 10, in 11th place, Valtteri Bottas. 12th, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Räikkönen, Lance Stroll, and Yuki Tsunoda. And then 16th through 20th, Latifi, Daniel Ricciardo, Giovinazzi, Mick Schumacher, and Mazepin. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you think of this list. Obviously, do your own list. I'll leave a link in the description down below. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas if you're watching this beforehand. And if you did have a wonderful Christmas because you're watching it after, let me know what you got. Let me know what presents we have. Is there anyone Formula One related that you got? Let me know in the description down below. In the comments. See you later. Wrong button again, man.